When you're running a science experiment, do you get mad and upset when something doesn't work out the way you want to? You're kind of testing and trying and tweaking and you don't get the result you want. Do you get mad? Well, most people don't. Most people take the data and they try it again and they improve. And then over time, you finally figure out how things work. That's pretty much how science experiments work, at least from my limited experience with science experiments from like high school and things like that. It's a series of testing and then fine tuning based off of the data. Well, when it comes to business and online business in particular, a lot of people like to treat their business like a math equation. I'm going to take a course, I'm going to follow the steps, and then I'm going to get the results. And there's a lot of things that are happening within a strategy instead, and it's not just the steps. It's not always just do this, do this, do this. And what we have found, especially since we deal with messaging, is that what you say and how you say it within a strategy makes all the difference in the world. And we've seen people be successful with a lot of different things. The problem is that most people don't focus on messaging in the beginning, and they normally go and focus on it after they already had a problem, which is totally fine. I'm glad you're focusing on it at some point. But the point I'm making is that it should be the foundational things that you use before you even start. And it has to be treated as a science experiment, not a math equation. The only way to figure out what's going to work is through trial, error, and testing. And so what I want to do in this episode is talk about our testing process, things we look for, and why this is so important. Because when you test, you get a new depth of messaging and communication. Your headlines are hitting harder. Your webinars are attracting people. People are showing up and people are actually converting. And if you're not getting any of that or all of that, if you're not getting every single one of those things, you're not getting eyeballs, you're not getting people to attend your stuff, and you're not getting sales. If you're not getting all three, you have a messaging problem. It's broken at some point. So if you're plateaued and you haven't been testing, or you don't know even what testing looks like or what you should be looking for, well, this episode is perfect for you. So keep on listening. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Happy to have you guys back for another episode. Over the next couple of weeks, our episodes are going to be more geared towards messaging and marketing. I'm really excited to hop back into teaching you all the things we've been learning about messaging. We've been working with a lot of students over the last, basically since our last launch. So what was that? August, September. And we've been evolving the program. So we've been incorporating more things like ads and webinars and messaging instead of emails, all from the lens of messaging. And we've been playing around with a lot of things inside of our business where we're testing different evergreen processes, open enrollment. We're still launching as well. And the more we dive into all of these different strategies, the more we dive into like, should I go evergreen? Should I launch? Should I have open enrollment? Should I go high ticket? You're starting to realize more and more, and I kind of already knew this because you guys have to remember, I've been in this space for 8-9 years or something like that, maybe even longer now that I think about it, in the course-based business, but I've been in the online space for even since I've been in college. I'm 39 now, so I was in college, what is it, 20? I was 20 in my 20s, so it's been 19 years I've been building websites and SEOing and all of that stuff. So I've been around in the space for a really long time. And we've sold millions of dollars worth of products, services. We've had an agency. I've done high ticket. I've done low ticket. I've done courses. I've done programs. I even sold physical products at one point. We sold a lot of different things. And I've used webinars. I've used video series. We've done challenges before. We've done live workshops. I feel like we've pretty much done it all. There's not a lot of things out there that people are doing to make money online or sales that we haven't done. And as we dive into this evergreen process, in fact, we've consulted with a few people. We've hired a few different people to help us with the evergreen process. And I'm looking, me personally, I'm looking between the evergreen and the launching model. And I just come to the conclusion, none of it really matters. The strategy just literally doesn't matter. Well, let me put it this way. If there was 1 through 100, I think strategy is like 10 to 15% of result in your success. Like obviously some strategies are going to be better for different price points, different programs, different offers, different types of businesses, things like that. So you have to take it into account. But at the end of the day, what I started to realize is if you don't know how to communicate, you don't have your messaging dialed in, you aren't able to communicate within that strategy, none of it freaking matters. And I've seen a million businesses do really well with the launch model. And I've seen a million different businesses do well with the evergreen. Obviously that's an exaggeration, but the point is you can be successful and you see successful people with either one. And for me, I see the benefits of launching and I see the benefits of going evergreen with open enrollment. My personal stance on it is that you shouldn't choose one or the other. I actually like having a blend. I like doing like maybe one big launch a year and then open enrollment through the remainder of the year. Because the way that I look at evergreen is people that go through your evergreen process. A launch can kind of clean up those sales, like bring people back into the ecosystem and then close them. And there's so much momentum and so much more energy behind that. And I think it's dangerous advice if you listen to anyone that's telling you, hey, you should just launch or you should just do evergreen. To be honest, I think it's pretty dangerous advice. And so I think having a nice blend of both is pretty awesome. But again, you have to look at your own personal preference. Like maybe you're someone who's like, I don't like launching. I just want to do everything. Great, go do that too. But just blindly, I guess what I'm saying is if you're blindly following just doing one thing because that's what people tell you to do and they have all these reasons for it being better, like you might want to put on your critical thinking hat for a second and just see what's best for you. And with that being said, again, it doesn't matter. It comes down to messaging. It comes down to how you're communicating. And so what we've realized especially over the last 6 months is that, this is my opinion, and obviously I might be a little bit biased because this is what I teach. I teach messaging, but I always think that messaging is actually the very first thing that you should be focusing on. And a lot of people come to us and they're like, well, I don't have an offer yet, and I don't have a product yet. And my response is always like, okay, when you do have an offer and you do have a product, don't you think it would be beneficial to have an audience already built in, an audience who's like knocking your doors down, waiting to ask to buy whatever it is that you want to sell? Your product and your offer are a result of your messaging. They don't create your messaging. And your messaging that's working will dictate the offer and the positioning. And again, we can have a whole separate conversation on product versus offer. Your product is not your offer. The easiest way I know how to explain it is what an offer is. It's the way you position your product to the audience. And there's a ton of different ways to do that. But what I always look at is like, what is the funnel? What is the messaging in the funnel? And then how do we position our product to create this really amazing offer? So for me, getting back to the point of where I'm going with this is that messaging really is that very first thing that anyone should be focusing on. But what we have realized is that most people come to us when they already have problems. And that problem usually happens in the form of a plateau. And we've been having so many conversations with people lately where they're like, I'm stuck, I'm plateaued. I've been at this space this level at a really long time and I don't know how to get out of it. Or a lot of people are actually seeing a decline. And we've seen a ton of people coming to us, especially in the last 6 months, where they are plateaued with something. And it's like, gosh, man, messaging should be the very first thing we come to. But a lot of people just hop in, start putting things out there. They get some sort of traction, usually, and then they hit some sort of plateau. I would say the majority of the plateaus are at 500,000 and below, but we still get people at 7 figures that are plateaued. And remember, Bob Healy came to us, he was plateaued at 2 million. And after going through our program, like next year was at 4 within less than a year. It doubled his revenue just by changing up his messaging. So what we realize is we're really that product or that solution to anyone who's plateaued. And that could be at 0 or 100,000. For most people, it's under 500. And what we are the program that makes all your other courses work. So all those courses that you bought that didn't work, and they're all strategy-based courses, we make them work. Like you don't need to go buy another strategy course if you have one already after you go through our program, because we change that communication and we change that messaging for you. If your content's stuck or your content's plateaued or whatever, we fix that as well. And we do it by integrating everything together. So ads, emails, funnels, upfront content, like everything is congruent and works together. So Again, what we've realized is we're that plateau. And a lot of people look at different things to get out of that plateau. We've heard every excuse under the sun of like, I need to hire more people. And it's like, you're plateaued. Why do you need to hire people? You need sales. You need to fix your sales problem. And we also hear things from people who are like, oh, my messaging's great. I just can't convert people. Like I know my stuff and my messaging's good because I'm getting people coming in, but they're just not converting. It's like, yeah, that's a direct problem and symptom of bad messaging. Like if you're able to attract people but can't convert them, you got half of your messaging figured out. You have a pretty serious messaging problem, because the point is when people hear you talk, they should want what it is that you have to sell right off the bat. And so what we've been doing is evolving our mentorship program to incorporate all of that sales stuff. So all of the ads, all of the emails connected with all the upfront stuff. But one of the biggest tools, and the whole point of this podcast today, is to talk about this idea of testing. And the first thing that we bring people through when you come into the NGM Plus program is testing. And I don't think a lot of people understand the value of testing or the benefit of testing, but it is the only way to figure out your messaging. And I think a lot of people will come into our program, NGM in particular, and not the plus, the mentorship one. And they come in and they just expect, okay, I'm gonna learn some frameworks and communication patterns and my messaging is gonna be fixed. And it's like, no, yeah, you're gonna learn that stuff, but then it's gonna require like putting it out there, looking at the data, all of that stuff. And then when people come to NGM Plus, which is more designed for profitable messaging, it's designed to like take your messaging and put it into ads, into webinars, into emails, as well as content. It's everything. We have 3 phases that we bring people through, and phase 1 is literally testing. Like we have a 4-step process of 4 major elements that you have to test before you come into the program. And here's why we have you do that. No matter how good I am or how much experience I have, I just don't know. I don't know what's going to convert. I can, like, you might be at 0 where it's like you're completely blind. You have no idea what's going to convert. And I might be able to get you to like 70, 80, 90% of where we should be. But that last 10 to 30% is going to require testing. And for those of you watching on YouTube, you probably have seen me hold my coffee cup. I thought it'd be a really cool idea to have coffee while I was doing a podcast episode and realize I don't have a guest, which means that if I had to drink my coffee, I have to stop the podcast. So I'm going to take a quick sip and we'll keep on going. I made a latte this morning. For those of you who don't know, I am a huge coffee snob. I eventually want to open a coffee shop one day. And I bought this really cool espresso machine, and which needs a grinder. I probably spent almost $3,000 on between a grinder and an espresso machine. But it's like coffee. Like I've been learning, and now we have pretty much coffee shop grade, good coffee shop grade lattes, espressos, and all that stuff here at the house. So anyways, back to testing. The thing is we never, the reason why we want to test is that we never know what's going to work. And so what testing does is it brings change. And I think a lot of people get so stuck in their communication where they're communicating from their perspective. You're communicating from your knowledge. You're not looking at or clear on who you want to attract. What are they actually dealing with? What are their problems? What are the mistakes they're making to fix those problems that doesn't work? What are they doing that causes the problem? We don't actually understand that. And most people just speak from their knowledge, and they just start talking and teaching with no consideration of any of those other factors. And so what we do is we found that if you do your testing correctly, you could actually figure out what works and close clients at the same time. And so what we've been doing with a lot of our students is having them test while driving them DMs, getting their audience to ask them how can they work with them. And we've had some people that have literally have gotten like 200 DMs in a 48-hour period. We had another person just yesterday message me like I already had 35 people DM her in the last 24 hours. We had one person close a $20,000 deal. And there's ways to test while closing people. But here's why we want to test. And here's why it's so important is, again, we never know what's going to actually work. And most people will basically do things like ask their audience what their audience wants and then give them what their audience says. And we've heard that advice for so long. It's like, just give them what they want, ask them what they want and give it to them. And I have a problem with that. And my problem is that if you have the wrong audience and people you don't like serving and you ask them what they want, you're going to be putting out content that attracts more of the people you don't want. And the other problem that I see with a lot of that type of stuff is that a lot of people get stuck in this cycle of giving their audience what they want and they lose their message. They lose themselves. It's always like, let me change and mold and give the external world what the external world wants, instead of having internal power and saying, this is what my message is. I'm going to figure out the best way to communicate it so it resonates, but this is what I want to say and what I want to talk about. And I'm going to attract people based off of what I want. That's where true power comes in with our messaging. So that's the problem that I have with it. I think asking your audience and serving your audience is great, but if they tell you that they want something and you don't want to talk about it, then don't. And if they say they want something and it's something that falls within your messaging ecosystem, it's something you want to talk about, go ahead. By all means, do it. That's probably a smart idea to do that. But the major problem that comes up with a lot of people is we have to test two different things. We have to test what to say, and we also have to test how to say it. What and how. The what usually comes in the form of topics that we're going to talk about, and how usually comes in the form of how we communicate that. So in the form of a webinar, for example, I'm going to pay attention to what is attracting my audience through a testing phase. And I'll talk about how we can do that later in this episode. But I'm going to look at my content, look at what's working, look at the topics that are resonating with my audience the most to figure out what I should be talking about on a webinar. So when I create a webinar topic, I'm not guessing at a topic or a theme. I know that it's a theme that people want because I'm looking at what's getting the most traction. So that's how I determine what to talk about. Now, that's pretty easy and pretty straightforward. The hardest part is the how. How do we talk about it in a way that resonates, comes from the audience's perspective, not our perspective? That's where most people kind of have a big breakdown. And so how we communicate it makes the biggest difference. And when we're able to test, it literally brings change into what and how we communicate. So again, if just to kind of give you a real life example here, if you realize that you're asking your spouse to do something, like take the trash out or something like that, and you've asked them 5 times and they've thrown a fit every single time you've asked them, maybe it's time to change the way you ask them. If you have kids and your kids aren't listening and you're not sure why they're not listening, maybe it's time to change the way you're asking them. Instead of being like, oh, I'm the parent, they're going to need to listen to me, blah, 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 blah. No, it's your job to keep a peaceful household, to keep your household in order. And if the way you're communicating isn't working, then change the freaking way you're communicating. It's that simple. It's the same thing with your audience. If you're plateaued, your audience isn't listening, they're not converting, you're not getting views, change the way you're freaking talking. Change the way you're communicating, because whatever you're doing, it's not working. It's not because you don't have enough people on your team. It's not because you don't have the best strategy. It's because the way you're communicating, people either don't think they need you, they don't trust in your ability to fix the problem, or they're okay dealing with the problem they have because you picked a really bad problem. You picked a problem that people are okay dealing with. And so we have to change the way in which we're communicating. So to give a couple more examples here, when we moved to Flagstaff, we moved here 6 or 7 months ago, probably 7 or 8 months ago now that I think about it. It was a process. We had all of our stuff in a bigger house in California. We ended up moving into a smaller house here in Flagstaff, because we moved basically at the height of the market. We sold at the height of the market, tried to buy in the height of the market. And it was a bloodbath out here. The amount of competition for homes out here is crazy. The housing market in Flagstaff in particular has just skyrocketed. But when we tried to buy, like we would put offers on homes. One home we offered like almost it was $125,000 over asking, and we still lost by someone who offered $250,000 over asking. Like it was crazy. Every house you're competing with like 5 or 6 people. So what we ended up doing is we decided to just let's buy an investment property, and we'll live in the investment property until a house pops up, and we'll buy then. And so that's what we're doing. We're living in the investment property right now, but it's smaller than the house that we were at. And there was this weird period of when we moved, where we basically didn't have a house. So we had the movers come, pack everything up, and then they put stuff into storage. And then we were living with my in-laws for about a month at their house. And then we moved to Flagstaff because they were still in California. Then we moved to Flagstaff, and we basically stayed in Airbnb for 2.5 months while the house was closing. And then we were remodeling the investment property as well. So we had to wait for the remodel to get done. So it was about, 2.5 to 3 month process of being homeless. No home, just living out of Airbnbs and stuff like that. And about, 90% of our stuff was probably in storage, which means all my kids' toys were in storage. A lot of their books and things and stuff that that their toys, like the things they love playing with and get creative with, their Legos and Play-Doh and like all that stuff was all in storage. And so for the 2 months that we were living in Airbnbs, we would get the question every single day, like, when are our toys going to get here? When are our toys going to get here? Our toys. And then the more we had to wait, the more frequently those questions would come up. Where are our toys? Where are our toys? So it was kind of funny too, seeing the difference between my son and my daughter. Will was very open with his frustration. He was just like, towards the end, he's like, our toys here. Oh, no. Oh my God. And he would go out and he would like kick a box or something like that, or like throw a ball against the wall or something like that. It's just like, when are our toys going to be here? And so it's just like physical with his emotions, and as the delay kept getting longer and longer. And then Lily, my daughter, was very manipulative in how she's very street smart. So she would always be like, okay, yeah, no problem, Dad. And then like 10 minutes later, hey, do you need to go to Target today? We should go to Target. I'm like, okay, I don't think so. She's like, we should go to Target. Don't you need blah, 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 blah. And she'd find something we need. I'm like, okay, sure. So we'd go to Target. And then when we're at Target, she's like, can we just check out? Can we just look at the toy section? I'm like, okay. And she goes, we don't have any toys. Our toys have been in storage for like 2 months. We don't know when they're going to get here because we didn't know when the remodel was going to get here. And then with the movers, here's the other thing with movers. Once you tell them your delivery date, like, hey, I want it delivered on like January 1st, they have 21 days to bring it to you legally. So you could technically be without your stuff for 3 weeks into wherever you're moving. So she's like, we don't know when our toys are going to get here. We should buy some toys. And so she's very like manipulative in that way. And it made me so proud because it was like, oh, you're such a great marketer, like taking people through step. So anyways, the remodel's done. We move into the house, and we got lucky where our stuff ended up coming like 2 days after being in the house or 3 days after being in the house or something like that. So we weren't in the house without our stuff for very long. In fact, I think we were still in our Airbnb, actually. We were still in our Airbnb when the stuff came, which is great. They finished remodel. We had the Airbnb for a couple more days and our stuff came. So it lined up perfectly. So here's the point of this long-winded story. When this stuff came, we went from a bigger house in California to a smaller house here. So we had stuff everywhere, like it was packed, bursting at the seams. And we started unpacking and getting all this stuff and just started throwing all the boxes on the side of the house. So these toys that my kids were asking about for 2 or 3 months, they finally got, and they played with them for about a day. And then for the next week, all they did was build forts outside the house with boxes. We had boxes everywhere, huge boxes, small boxes, and they built these amazing forts. But the point of what I'm saying is they asked about the toys for 3 months. Logic would have told us, hey, they want the toys. But in reality, I could have just gone and spent $100 on boxes, and they would have kept them entertained for a week, and they would have never thought about their toys. So this story teaches us that we want to pay attention to the behavior of what people are doing or showing us they're saying through their behavior versus what they say based off of logic. And the reason why is our subconscious controls so much. Our subconscious controls 90 to 95% of our decisions that we make every single day. This is scientifically proven. There's no arguing here. It just does. And, a perfect example of this is when you see a piece of content in the newsfeed, when you see an ad, you're not making a logical, conscious decision. Should I click on this? Why should I click on this? What's the pros and the cons of clicking on this? You just click on it because something in that ad or that piece of content spoke to your subconscious. It caused an automated decision or reaction of click and watch. And then as you consume that piece of content, there's going to come a point where you're going to leave that piece of content. And you're either going to leave because it bored you or it's not interesting to you anymore, which again is not based off of logic. You just have this feeling, this automated response to it. Where you're like, okay, I'm done. And you leave. Or you stay the whole time. And so if people aren't paying attention to your content, if people aren't paying attention to your webinars, they're not watching all the way through, or they're not getting to the point where they buy, there's something broken in your communication. If our communication and our messaging is working, it should speak to the subconscious so that it attracts someone from an ad and gets them all the way to a sale. And if it's broken, there's something broken in there, it means that you failed to speak to their subconscious in a way that makes it relatable or makes them feel like they need to maintain it or stay. And you're not going to be able to speak to everyone's subconscious. So there will be people that are leaving. But if you're not getting any sales or you're plateaued in sales, something is broken somewhere. And the way in which you're communicating has to start to change. And again, a lot of people will also have great messaging in the beginning. They might be getting sales and growing organically, but then they plateau. And basically what happens is you said something to attract a certain amount of people, and then you tapped out sales within those people. So which let's just say you attracted 100,000 people and you did it all organically, and that's great. And you're not really growing past that 100,000 people in your audience size. It's because whatever you're saying, that message has tapped out. That message doesn't have that much more potential to reach more people. And so on its own, so we could either go to cold traffic, but then if it doesn't convert with cold traffic, like, I'm sorry, but that messaging, its life is done. It's time to evolve and pivot and change and grow. And what most people do is they get to a point, and that's why I say most of these plateaus are under 500, is because people will build something organically or with very little ad spend. They'll sell, they'll do well, and then they tap out their warm traffic and they can't bring in enough cold traffic to continue the growth. So they start to plateau. And then what happens is some of them go on a decline because that message now becomes old within that audience. And so then people hop from strategy to strategy, to course, and it's the strategy and course. And it's like, no, your messaging and your communication is basically tapped out. And we can change it to speak more to the subconscious. But the point I'm making here is that we have to understand that messaging and your communication needs to take into account the subconscious reactions of your audience. In fact, all of the messaging, and whether you want to believe it or not, even the way you look at other people's messaging, it's all processed subconsciously. Even the fact that you're on this podcast still after 25 minutes shows me that I'm saying something that is interesting to you, and you didn't have to think about whether or not it was interesting. You just like, wow, okay, I want more. It's you have an automated or an emotional response, automatically coming, boom, 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 and you're still here. And for those of people who have already turned off, like, I wasn't speaking enough specifically to either their situation or speaking to their subconscious in the way that I needed to. So one more kind of example here. It's kind of funny. It's a little bit embarrassing, but everyone gets a chuckle out of it every time I tell a story. We don't always want to listen to what people tell us they want. Another perfect example is my wife. She, for the longest time, when we were basically broke and didn't have any money, she wanted the Dyson vacuum, and it was expensive. It was like a $200 to $400 vacuum or something like that, which back then was a ton of money for us. It still is. I can't imagine paying $400 for a vacuum. That's crazy. But anyways, I digress. So she kept saying, I want the Dyson vacuum, the one with the ball on it, because it could turn and all this stuff. And I remember it was either Christmas or a birthday. I can't remember. I couldn't find a gift for her, or well, it's not that I couldn't find one. I actually just procrastinated and waited to the last day. But anyways, I went to Target to go look for a gift, which, by the way, Target's probably not the best idea unless there's something specifically that they said they wanted from Target. Probably not the best idea to get like a birthday or wedding, or not wedding, Christmas present for your spouse, wife in particular at Target. But lesson learned. And so anyways, I'm walking around and I see the Dyson vacuum that she wanted. I'm like, oh, perfect. This is what she said she wanted. So I got it and I thought I totally like nailed it. And then I remember watching her open up the gift and then I could just see the look on her face, which you can imagine the look on my face going from like, yeah, I freaking crushed it to, oh God, what did I do? And she, end of the story is that she did not like the vacuum. We ended up keeping it because she's like, I still want it, but you have to go get me something else. So I don't remember what we got her. Maybe even a purse or something. I don't remember. But anyways, there's another example of something someone said they wanted, but it wasn't really what they wanted. And I love the Henry Ford quote where he says, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have told me a faster horse. And we have to look at what people really want when they say stuff. And so if someone says they want a faster horse, it's not that they want a faster horse. They just want to go faster. And if we can figure out a way to get them to go faster, it doesn't matter if it's a horse or it's something else. They just want to go from point A to point B a lot faster. And that's the same thing with your audience. They're going to tell you they want one thing based off of their logic, making a conscious decision, but their subconscious is really the driver here. So what we've done is when we go through a testing phase, we go through testing to figure out what does their subconscious want? Like what part of my message is landing the most and how do I communicate this in a way that lands the most? So how do I figure out the what and how do I figure out the how? And the easiest way to look at this is look at people's behavior because behavior for the most part is subconsciously driven. And what that means is what emails are getting the best open rates? What subject lines did you use? What ads are getting the best clicks? Which pieces of your content are getting the most views, the most shares, the most comments, the most watch time? What podcast episodes are getting the most downloads? Look at the behavior. Look at the actions that people are taking on the topics you're talking about. And let the behavior drive the decisions you make when it comes to what you talk about, especially in a launch. So anytime I do a webinar or something like that, I'm not guessing. I am making a very calculated decision on what topics to talk about. And then once we figure out that topic, you want to test even further. Like maybe do a webinar a week, even if it's to 10 people. Like take little segments of your list or get a few small ads running where people like you get 10 to 20 people a week, like attending a webinar and you test and test. And did it work? Did it work? Did it work? The people showing up? Great. Yeah. Okay, great. Now maybe we can do this for a launch. And so there has to be a testing strategy inside of your content, inside of your brand, if you really want to get to that 7 or multiple 7-figure level. Because when you do this, your ads become hyper effective. Your content becomes even more effective. People show up to your conversion rates because that topic has proven that you found a problem that they want solved, a problem they've been trying to solve on their own. And it's a problem that they're willing to show up for. It's a big enough problem that they're willing to show up for. So that's how we figure out the what, okay? In a very short, kind of concise way. Obviously, there's a deeper process to follow for it, but for the most part, like just paying attention to what content is getting the best results is already going to put you at a whole nother level. The how you communicate that topic is actually what takes a lot more practice because you're going to have to change the way in which you communicate. You've been communicating the way you communicate for a really long time. I don't know how old you guys are. Some of you are probably 20, some of you maybe 60, some of you maybe 80. I don't know. But however old you are is how long you've been communicating a very specific way. And we're going to have to change that. So there's certain language patterns you can use. There's certain communication styles that you can use. But also we have, I believe, around 16 different elements that have to be figured out if you want your messaging to be effective. And what I mean by effective is that people automatically show up to your content. They're responding. They want what you sell before they even know anything is for sale. They're engaging on your content. Your show up rates improve, your conversion rates improve. And most importantly, you're able to take that messaging to ads and you're able to scale it out, which means you get to a point where you put in $1 and you get $3, $4, $5 out on the other end. And that's where true scalability is going to come in. But that messaging piece has to be thoroughly tested. And so the major things that we test are specific problems, specific mistakes causing those problems, specific mistakes they make to try to fix the problem on their own, and industry norms causing the problems. Those are like the 4 things. And then we integrate those into webinars, into ads, into emails, into content. And what it does is it gets people to self-identify, oh my God, they're talking about me. They're talking about my specific situation. They're talking about exactly what I'm doing. And I love all four of those because there's different ways in which we can use it. But I really love the talking about mistakes that people make to try to fix the problem. And the reason why is you have to understand your messaging is what's going to attract people. So if you're intentional with the identities you use, the values you use, the beliefs you use, you can attract someone who has the values you want to attract, the beliefs you want to attract, all of that, the identities of who you want to attract. But when we also use problems, when we also use mistakes, sorry, not problems, but when we use, well, we want to use problems, but for this example here, when we use mistakes that people are making to try to fix the problem, we're actually attracting people that have raised their hand and said, this is a problem that I have, and I am trying to take steps to fix it, but I have not figured out what it is yet. So we're attracting people that have really, 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 well, they're people they're action takers. They're people that are willing to invest time and energy in order to fix the problem. Versus attracting people who have the problem and are like, yeah, I'm okay dealing with it, or they're not action takers, or they're so much in their limiting beliefs that they're never going to take action on anything. Okay. So again, what we want to do is start paying attention to what you're saying and how you're saying it in order to figure out what are my topics going to be, what are my content topics going to be, what are my webinar topics going to be, what are my ad headlines going to be, what am I going to say in these ad headlines? Now, again, inside of NGM Plus, for those of you guys that are there, we have a whole process that we bring you through. And then once we figure out what it is and what's working, we start integrating into our webinar frameworks, our ad frameworks, our content frameworks. And then you start to see this massive growth inside of your business. But it's going to take testing. It's going to take tweaking. And my message to you guys as we wrap up this episode is that if you're not willing, well, let me put it this way. Then one of the biggest mistakes that I see is that people will sit there and they'll wait and wait and wait, and they'll try to get their content perfect. Especially people even that come into our program are like, what do you think of the script? Did I like nail it? And I'm like, I don't freaking care. Like, just post it. And then let's let the data tell us. I don't like, unless there's a red flag. One of our philosophies inside of our program is I'm not going to give you script reviews or copy reviews. I'll look it over. And if there's a red flag, let's fix the red flag. But if there's not a red flag, I'm not going to sit there and be nitpicky about it, because you're going to see way more results by putting things out there that are 60, 70%, but doing it way more frequently than waiting to get to 80%. So if you put out 10 pieces of content or ads in a week, and they're like what I would consider 60 to 70%, or you can put out one piece of content or one ad that's like 80%, you're going to get way more data from those 10 ads at 50 to 60% than you would at the one ad at 80% or piece of content at 80%. So you have to put this stuff out there quickly. Stop overthinking it. Stop thinking you're going to do something bad or wrong if you post out something that's not totally ready yet. Nobody knows it's not ready except for you. And what we're looking for are the home runs, especially in the beginning. Like if I had to start all over again, I would literally just post and not get caught up in, are people going to like it? Not like it. I don't really care. Just give me the freaking data that's going to tell me what's going to work. And then what I start to do is I start to focus more on the things that are working. And then my brand and my content and my ads and my funnel start to get more lasered. And then all of a sudden when things get more lasered, you know what happens? Boom, growth happens. And most people are afraid to putting something out that's quote unquote not ready or bad because they think people are going to judge them and leave. And it's like, well, no, you're just not giving people an opportunity to follow you, see your content, and you're not giving yourself an opportunity to really even see what's going on, to see what's working. And so for us, I want to take as much guessing out of the equation as I can. And there's just so many people that are just guessing every single day. Maybe this will work. Maybe this email will work. Maybe this problem will work. Maybe this metaphor will work. Maybe this story will work. And then you go and you launch with a bunch of guest messaging. That's a new term. I should use that, guest messaging. And I like that. With a bunch of guest messaging, and they're like, oh, my launch didn't work. It's the strategy. Let me hop to another strategy. And it's like, no, you were just lazy with your messaging, or you're just too, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but too ignorant. Like you just didn't know. You just didn't know that messaging was the thing that you had to focus on because everyone's preaching strategy. So testing is kind of what I wanted to cover here. And testing allows us to create like that subconscious communication, and when we can take proven subconscious communication messaging and integrate it into stuff, we see a lot of scaling happening within brands, within ads, launches, evergreen. And again, it takes the strategies that you already have and it makes them effective. It takes the courses you already have and makes them effective. And again, I don't really care if you guys go evergreen, if you have high ticket, low ticket, if you have, you want to go launching, or you want to do a blend of all of it. Just figure out what's best for you, test, and figure out how to communicate it to the subconscious of your audience, and in a way that feels good to you and aligned with you and your purpose as well. So that's it for this episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We're going to continue for the next few weeks here, 6 to 8 weeks, just going deeper and deeper with messaging concepts. This is one of them. I think next week we're going to be talking about what I would do if I was to start all over again from like zero. And you better bet testing's going to be like the very first thing that we talk about. So I look forward, or no, I think we talked about that last week. Yeah, we may have talked about it last week. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to it. Listen to that episode because we do talk about testing. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on iTunes. I always love reading those reviews. And yeah, that's it. So I will see you guys on the next one. Take care. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.